Hey everyone, this is Steve Runner with Scout DFS. Gonna do a quick optimizer walkthrough video for you guys. This is what I would consider the 101 series for our optimizer. So I'll go over just a couple use cases if you're new to either DFS or new to Scout or even the use of an optimizer. This will hopefully get you started to be able to play with it and make it a useful and powerful tool when setting your lineups, whether it's one lineup or multiple lineups for each week. So we're going to go over with the football slate for this upcoming week. And first thing to do is go to the Scout DFS site. Once you're on here, you'll see at the top menu NFL Optimizer, and just go straight to the optimizer link underneath of that. You can access this on mobile. You can access it on a tablet, or of course, as I'm doing here, on a desktop. So once you go into the optimizer, you'll see a couple things. One, all of the projections down here for the players are powered by the award-winning projections that we have. Currently ranked number one for the first 2 weeks of the season so far. So you know you're getting some solid projections on the numbers here. But two, we've got the three sites here that we've covered for the optimizer. So DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo being the three sites. You'll notice right away underneath of that here where it says the contest. This is what is referred to as the slate each week. Since I'm doing this today, it's Wednesday prior to week 3 for the NFL season. It shows me the Thursday, Monday slate only for DraftKings, and this is a common question we get, which is early in the week, someone's looking for the slate that begins on Sunday. Well, this is looking at it based upon date. So if I want to see slates for this upcoming weekend before the Thursday night slate begins, I just need to click on the next day up here in the upper right where it shows 6 contests for Sunday, September 23rd. So I'm going to go ahead and do that so we can go over kind of the main slate and get a little bit bigger player pool to be able to go with it on for this week. So once I change that, it reloaded here automatically. I've got now all the Sunday slates from main, early only, the Sunday, Monday, all the way down to the primetime slate, which is the Sunday night, Monday night contest. When I did that, it auto-populated the games and the teams that are in the slate. So for the main, it excluded the Sunday night, Monday night games. So New England, Detroit, and Pittsburgh, Tampa are automatically grayed out. And I've got a player pool of 380. And you can uncheck teams in this box, and it will remove the players from the pool to be able to optimize. Puts them down here in the excluded list. They're no longer in the pool. For the purpose of the demo, I don't want to do that for any of the teams, so I'm going to go ahead and click them back in, and now they go back into the player pool. You can always do that with clearing filters here. You can reset any stats if you make modifications, and there's also a download link that I'll cover in a second. So number of lineups here. This allows you to build more than one lineup. It's good to see what does the optimizer spit out the first lineup, and then who does it take out and put in the second. So that's where you can come in here. You can easily just go in and change it to 20, and I can run 20 lineups. Keep that back at 1 now. Randomization does exactly what it says. So if it's set to 0, which is the default, it's going to build you the most optimal lineup that it can. If you set it to 10, it will randomize it. This is useful more when you go to build more than one lineup. So if I build 10 lineups and I set the randomization to 0, you'll find that it really only changes 1, maybe 2 players per lineup. If I set it to 10, I'm going to get a much more random lineup as I go through. Still building, optimal as it can based upon the projections, but it will, tend to make a little bit more adjustments, and so that helps you a little bit more with the diversity of lineups. The strategy, how it builds it. This is determining, is it using the projection, which is typically the median? Is it using a ceiling, or is it using the floor? You'll find some cases people prefer to use the ceiling for tournaments and the floor for cash games. And oftentimes there are players where that applies. Someone who may have a solid floor, might be a running back that's going to be getting 20 plus touches for an upcoming week in a game where that's going to be the strategy where they're funneling to that. Versus someone who has a ceiling, it might be a player that's going to be going into a game where his team's going to be trailing. Let's say a quarterback like this week, Jimmy Garoppolo is a good example where the 49ers are projected to be behind in a high-scoring game. He has a little bit higher ceiling than some other guys. So typically when I would come in here, if you're new to this, just leave it on projection. You're going to be getting the best projections there with that setting. but certainly that gives you a couple variations to modify with. In the upper right, we have some different filters. So risk scores. This basically means a player who has a low risk score is considered a low risk play for the week. 10 is a high risk. Salary range is exactly what it means. So if I don't want any really bargain players and I want to get a balanced lineup, maybe I'll set this to kind of in the middle based upon the player here. Let me get a quick range, and you can see between 7,600 and 9,600, there's only 13 players because obviously defenses are going to get excluded off of that. But just another filter for you to kind of to play with as you go through and build with it. And then the value range, this is key. So the value range basically says take the fantasy points based upon the projection, divide it by salary times 1,000, and you get their value range. So the higher the value means that that player is better value play for that given week. You can filter based on the game totals. You can see here every team's projected total using the Vegas data for the given week. This does update as the Vegas lines move. And then if you want to filter out any players who are probable or questionable based upon injuries, you can do that. If you're doing it early in the week, I wouldn't look to play with that too much, but certainly if you're trying to be very risk adverse, that is something you could look to tinker with. So let's go ahead and dive into building some lineups now. So I can see here I've got a player pool with every single player. I can filter through based upon position to look at different settings for the players. And one thing you can do as you go through this, you can modify a player's projection. So if there's someone that you want it to be very heavy on, let's say if we're building multiple lineups or even just one, and you really want to beef up their projection, you maybe come in here and say, like for example this week, Kareem Hunt, who's got a pretty good value at 18 projected points for just 6K, but maybe you project him and say, I don't really like Kareem Hunt this week, so I'm going to lower his projection down to just 10 points. I think it's going to be a game where the Chiefs are going to air it out. I don't want to rely on Hunt. He's been risky at the goal line at times, so you can adjust that there. If you get a little too crazy and you want to reset it all, certainly just come back here, hit reset, and now his projection went back in there. So first thing I'm going to walk through here is I'm going to just kind of give an example of building one lineup, and then we'll go through building 5 lineups using a core. So first lineup, you can literally just come through, hit optimize, and you get a good example. And a lot of people will say, well, I just clicked optimize, 100 other people just ran this, they saw the same lineup, aren't I going to have duplicate lineups? Yes and no. So the no part is obviously you don't want to take everything exactly out of this optimizer and say that's 100%. There's no tweaks that need to be made. For example, with this week, we got Julio Jones, who didn't practice today. Jack Doyle's questionable as well. They'll probably both play, but as we get closer to lineup lock, there might be adjustments there. And the optimizer does adjust the projections, especially Sunday mornings. So it's real critical to maybe take an early snapshot, come back in, see where the player movement was. But one thing with this, you want to be able to take away from the initial build is, where did the optimizer spend money? So where is it finding value? And in this case, it found certainly some value at tight end by only spending $3,500 for Jack Doyle, and the flex spot $4,200 for Royce Freeman. Now, I don't feel comfortable with Royce Freeman and the split backfields that they're getting. I don't like Denver going on the road this week. It might be something, advice that I heard either with Dr. Roto or Adam Ronis. Maybe it's something you read with one of our articles. For whatever reason, we looked at Freeman this week and we don't want him at all. So I'm going to go and find Freeman here and completely X him out of the player pool. The other team I don't want to trust is the Cardinals, and they're going to get completely out of my lineup here. So I'm going to X them out, and I want to go ahead and lock in a defense this week. And the Vikings at home against the Bills seem like as good of a lock as I can get. So I lock them in at 4,300. And now I'm going to go ahead and clear out the rest of the players, but it keeps the Vikings locked in there. And I'm going to determine that my core this week that I want to build around is going to be Mr. Red Hot, if I can find him here, Patrick Mahomes. And I'm going to go ahead and lock him in with Tyreek Hill. And I'm not recommending these plays this week, but I'm just giving you an example. So Mahomes and Hill, they'll probably be popular because of recency bias, but Mahomes, Hill, Vikings, I want those sure things. optimize off of this. Based upon that, I've now been given Mahomes, Johnson, Hunt, Amendola, Crowder, Eifert, Shady McCoy, and Vikings. Do I still need to make tweaks? Probably. I'm going to look at Shady McCoy and say, well, I don't want to play a running back against my defense. And that is something where the optimizer, it's just looking at the numbers, trying to build the most optimal lineup off of that. So you got to be smart at how you look at it here. But let's go ahead and X him out. Give me a new option off of this. Matt Breida, which is a perfect correlation with the Kansas City stack that I have here. David Johnson, Amendola, Crowder. We got Charles Clay that we need to get out of here now. So we're going to go ahead and X him out. You can see it's finding value on some of those Buffalo players this week, which normally I would say you could look at that and say it's a good pivot to look at. And as you can see, I'm going to have to search for Clay. So I can go ahead and put him in. Oh, it already excluded him out, so he's good. By hitting X there, it took him out. Rerun. And now we got Jack Doyle back in there. And Mohamed Sanu, who was one of my sneaky plays this week. So I can take that lineup, roll with it, write it down, put it in a spreadsheet, put it in a dummy lineup on DK, save it out there, come back closer and see what adjustments got made. So that was walking through kind of one lineup. I'm going to go ahead and clear everything out. We'll clear our filters, reset the stats, unlock some of these players, and the excluded player pool should be clear, and everyone is going to be in the player pool off of this. So clear the lineup completely out. Clear my Charles Clay search. And we will see that all players are back in. So one thing I want to do now is let's go and try to build 5 lineups off of this. And I just refreshed the window, so bear with me on this. And one thing I want to do with the 5 lineups is if I'm doing like a 3 entry max or 5 entry max, I want to see how it differentiates off the lineup. So I'm going to first come in here and build just 5, and we're going to set the randomization up to 5 as well. And go ahead and tell it to build 5 lineups. And you'll see here it says my lineups, 1 of 5. And once the optimizer refreshes off of this, forgive the demo for being slow. It's given us 5 lineups that I can scroll through, and you can see as I go through, different players are changing and adjusting off of this. So I want to build 5 lineups, and I want to do it using a core. And with 13 games, we're on Thursday to Monday. Excuse me, let me get back to the Sunday. But with 13 games, just a little advice, you don't want to force the optimizer to go across all 13 once you've done some initial research. It's a good starting point to show you who it's on. Maybe it's on someone sneaky that you weren't thinking of. But once you've done some initial research, you can really use it to kind of perfect your lineups. And so I'm going to go through and I'm going to exclude a few games. One, let's go ahead and chop off the Buffalo and Minnesota game. I know the Minnesota defense is popular, but there's some other ones. I'm also not going to touch Indy, Philly, and I don't want any part of Cincinnati, Carolina, or Tennessee and Jacksonville. Those are games that I'm all completely off of for the main slate this week. And let's go ahead and exclude the Cardinals, the Cowboys, and the Seahawks. So now I've reduced my player pool, and I'm asking the optimizer to get very specific. This is where a core comes in. I'm going to build 5 lineups. Let's randomize it a little bit more. And I'm going to look to do a game stack. And when I say game stack, I don't mean going and playing 6 to 7 guys from that game, but I want to pick my core quarterback to receiver combination, and I want to pick someone on the other side to run it back with. And being a Saints fan, since they're playing Atlanta, we'll go ahead and use the Saints as an example. So, Drew Brees at only 6,400. Saints without Mark Ingram again for another couple weeks. Have been throwing the ball a lot more to start the season. And Atlanta certainly playing with only running back as well. There's a good reason to believe that this could be a back-and-forth shootout like the olden days between the Saints and Falcons prior to last year at least, when both teams are scoring in the 30s. So let's go ahead and lock in Drew Brees. And no receiver right now is hotter and getting open more than Michael Thomas. So I'll spend up for Michael Thomas this week, who at 8,900 in tournaments might actually still be contrarian despite having 30 targets through 2 games. The obvious play here is to then come back with Julio Jones on the other side. But I mentioned before, Mohamed Sanu was one of my sneaky plays. He's also mentioned in the cash article, and he was spit out by the optimizer when we tested before. So let's go ahead and pick in Mohamed Sanu and lock him in there. So now I've got a base mini game stack here. I could take it much further. I could add in a Kamara. I could add in Tevin Coleman. I could add in maybe one of the tight ends in this game as well. But I'm going to leave it at this for now and show you 2 different examples off of that. So I've got 3 guys locked in, and I now want to go over to the defenses. And I took Minnesota out. They're going to be popular at their price. But staring me in the face here are the Chicago Bears going into Arizona at 3,500. I'm going to lock in the Bears into every single one of my defenses. Go ahead and hit optimize, and now we've got a build. And because I took Arizona out, I know I'm not getting any Cardinals against my Bears defense. So immediately we have Hunt, Breda, Ingram, Freeman built into the first lineup. And as you can see, we go through. Alex Collins gets jumped in. Ingram and Amendola are in there now with Hunt and Breda. Todd Gurley comes in. Freeman's back in, and then we get to the 5th lineup, and Mike Gesicki pops in. I'm telling you, when you need to go through and build multiple lineups, don't just look at the first one. Go through, find the 5th one. There are hidden gems in the optimizer every single week that you need to find. Gesicki and Crowder are 2 to keep an eye on for this week. So I could take these 5 lineups, and I can immediately run with them or look at it and say, you know what, I found that there's enough value plays in here. Let me go ahead and clear this out. And I want to, instead of going with just Sanu here, let's go a little bit more bold on this game. And let's go ahead and add in Tevin Coleman. Add in Tevin Coleman to the stack. And let's add in Alvin Kamara. Now I'm spending quite a bit of money on this one stack. As you can see, it's only got 38.33 remaining for the last 3 spots. But I'm going to challenge the optimizer. Give me the value plays so I can stack. Freeman, Crowder, Ben Watson. You might want to snapshot that lineup. It's pretty good. If Freeman goes off, that's got a good lineup this week if the stack works. Second here, it plugged in Antonio Gates and Danny Amendola, Jamison Crowder and Gates, Amendola and Ryan Griffin, and then back to Collins, Griffin, and Anthony Miller. So as you can see, it gave us different variations. Those probably aren't the safest lineups given the amount of money that we're spending on the core stack. So last example here, let's take Michael Thomas out. I can leave Kamara in there because of the number of volumes that he catches that he sees. Coleman's a good value at 6,400, but I'm going to go on the Saints side here. So last build with the optimizer, give me 5 lineups with that core, and as you can see, it's starting to spread around the love of the players in here. So I've got 5 lineups. I like them. Just click download, downloads it to a CSV, and now you can take that and import it directly to DraftKings. So those are 2 examples. Hopefully it helps. Again, to recap, use it early in the week, see who the optimizer is on, see where it's spending money. Use a couple of your own research plays based upon articles that you've read, looking at the scout scores and everything that's out there available to lock in a couple core players. Tinker with it until you get the right lineup, and then don't be afraid to go in and build 5 lineups. If you have any questions, go ahead and hit up us on Twitter or in Slack chat, and we'll be able to definitely help you guys.